all his loyal lieutenant or confidant in the military were purged, including 3 members in the so-called Central Military Committee, and all the admirals and lieutenant general and so on and so forth. And then that's a very clear indicator that he's losing his protection.
Coming up on British thought leaders, Allen Zeng says Xi Jinping has lost power and is under control of new leaders.
That's how the party works. You listen to the party if you want your life. So he has to behave. So in this sense, I would say it's not overstating that Xi Jinping is half a figurehead. Okay, he has to go by what the party told him, what the new leadership of the party told him.
Allen says those who really understand the CCP are predicting its demise.
And the time is not on their side. Okay, even though many people still see they are very powerful, they are not. Okay, only they themselves know how weak they are, but outside people they don't know.
Welcome to British Thought Leaders. I'm Lee Hall. Today I'm sitting down with Allen Zeng, journalist, commentator, and presenter of Fang Time and Good Morning China. Allen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lee.
So we're talking today about Xi Jinping. A lot of Chinese language sources are saying he's lost power. And can you talk us through the events that have happened that led up to this?
Yeah, indeed. Actually, to the people who understand Chinese politics, okay, probably it's like writing on the wall. But to normal Westerners, they say, "What are you talking about?" Indeed, let me explain. There's a lot of science, a lot of traces to draw conclusion upon, but mainly just 3 things. Okay, first is basically his lieutenant. Okay, his loyal confidant in the military has been purged in a pretty thorough way. Okay. And one could argue that, it's just he's just trying to fix corruptions. That's why they were moved. This is the, mainstream common recognition, but that's wrong.
So when you say purged, you mean he disappeared?
Right, because you have to understand the Communist Party, how they works, okay? There's no system, it's not rule-based. Power men, okay, take the helm.
Right.
Take the top position. And that position has to be protected by military power.
Yeah.
So in their philosophy is this famous saying is political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. I don't know whether you heard about that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So when he purged all his loyal lieutenant or confidant in the military were purged, including 3 members in the so-called Central Military Committee, and all the admirals and lieutenant general and so on and so forth. And then that's a very clear indicator that he's losing his protection.
Right.
The second thing is the press exposure and the placement. You may or may not understand this, but indeed in the state-run media, especially those like People's Daily or the CCTV, the times of exposure of a certain political figure, as well as the placement of it, even the length of the video, 4 seconds versus 5 seconds, are strictly regulated. Okay, however high you are, however well you are treated. So for the people who understand the work of the party, they know how to read the leaf of the tea.
Right.
And then over the course of 1 year and a half, okay, his exposure and placement has been going down, not just disappear, has been gradually reduced in a predictable way. Okay, that cannot be coincidental. The third thing is the policy. The policy has been taking a turn. Each top leader of the CCP has their own so-called their style, their policy, their so-called signature slogan. Okay, for example, for the Jiang Zemin, his signature slogan is so-called 3 representations, or 3 representatives. And for the Hu Jintao, the predecessor of the Xi Jinping, is called science-based development.
Right.
And then which is based upon 3 things: make decision based upon science, based upon laws, and based upon democracy. Okay, that's a taboo actually in Xi Jinping time. When Xi Jinping first came in power, he started to consolidate his power, right? And finally, he changed the party charter, saying that he can continue taking the position until indefinite time. So he would never talk about making a decision by but the democracy based on democracy or rule or laws or science. Okay, and then there's also emphasis on the called rule by group. Okay, that was big no during his Xi Jinping's mainly his 8 to 9 years. And then there's this very subtle thing. Okay, the State Department. The State Department is a state. The House of the State is not like America's State Department. Okay, it's like the organization, the government, the body that run the nation. They emphasize on something called a street vendor economy, okay, which basically encourage people to go to the street and set up booth there and then make a living by themselves.
Right.
That's a big no in the Xi Jinping time. It's called like a struggle of the different path. It's that serious. Okay, and then that very policy was a favorite or was advocated by his prime minister who died. Okay, it's a very accidental, strange death. And then now, and the Xi Jinping and this person, prime minister, his name is called Li Keqiang. They got a big conflict. Of course, the prime minister cannot stand up to him, and he got removed or he retired, and then he just died suddenly. And now his policy, okay, this is called a street vendor economy, become the main thing in the Xi Jinping time. In the CCP's politics, it's like slapping the face on himself. That doesn't happen if he still hold on the power. There's a lot of other things. Okay, there's almost like a 10. And there's somebody who summarized this into article, which listed 10 traces for you to read what happened in China. Right. I'm just listing a few of them. But anyway, that tells us that things are happening in China only to the eyes of the people who understand the party politics and how it works. They can read it. I hope the Western intelligence know that they're smart enough to read this and understand this undercurrent change, which is very serious.
It's quite incredible to hear, especially with the media, that there's this kind of unwritten language and you can understand what's going on if you understand the politics of the party.
Yeah, that's true. You have to understand the intricacy of the party, how things work, how things move. You have to live there. It's not like somebody just tell you, in 10 minutes you say got it. You have to live there. The party work in its own particular way, and then for the people who understand it, they can find it out. But I think while I'm saying that he's actually virtually losing power, but you read from the press, right? This guy is the number one leader of CCP of the country still. He talked to President Trump and he talked to Putin. He represented China and go out as the head of the state and so on and so forth. I can only say this, okay? The people who really taking power from him, okay, what's their mentality? This is my information, okay? And they don't know how to take China next step. Because by insisting on the orthodox communist way, I think that's a no-go. That's pretty much Xi Jinping's road. But to revert back to reform, they're gonna grow the middle class, okay, the people who has the wealth, who insist on their power, on their rights. That's that's dangerous to them too. So essentially, when they carry out this economic reform, when they enrich a group, a layer of people, and then that layer of people naturally, automatically become their enemy, even though they don't want to usurp power from them, but they are perceived that way. Just like Ma Yun, right? The Jack Ma. He's really just a billionaire. He never thought about I'm going to take the political power of China, but being so influential is perceived as a threat.
Right.
That's how the party reads things. Now they are dilemma. They said we went through this 40-year economic reform. Okay, we got into some situation where it's going to losing control, and then Xi Jinping take the road back and revert back to our orthodox way. And now we're crippled economy. Now we're facing this crisis, domestic crisis, and also the crisis in the world. What do we do? They don't know what to do. So in that kind of hesitation, okay, they're not busy putting in the successor to replace Xi Jinping because this guy created this mess. Well, somebody has to be held responsible for this mess. They prefer to be still this guy. So because of that, they did not remove them. But the party apparatus is very powerful, okay? Even if he go out of China, go to Moscow, or go to, another, just South Africa or something like that, they are still able to control him. I don't know whether you believe in that or understand that. That's how the party works. You listen to the party if you, want your life. So he has to behave. So in this sense, I would say it's not overstating that Xi Jinping is half a figurehead. Okay, he has to go by what the party told him, what the new leadership of the party told him.
So if it is the end of Xi Jinping, who can we expect to replace him?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the question actually on the top of the mind of all the people. Who are those people? Those people are mainly two groups of people. One is those, those old leaders. They retired, and now they were invited to come out of their retirement and come here to take care of this mess that Xi Jinping created. Another is the current, the military leaders who purge Xi Jinping's lieutenants. All right, those are the main people who sit on the top, and they don't know, they are not sure, what to go next step. They tend to be more liberal, I would say. I mean, in terms of taking China to the to the Western society. They have that tendency. Okay, they are not as extreme as Xi Jinping or the orthodox communist, but still they are communist. You understand that? They're still communist. They are not that daring or that open to make a big change. So they're hesitating. That's what I know. The state of China is.
How do you think Xi Jinping will be remembered amongst the Chinese people? How will his rule be remembered?
Yeah, he will. He will. I would say go down in history as a bad name. Okay, and because indeed during his 10-year reign, he brought China's economy to its knees, and unnecessarily created a lot of suffering for the people. And actually, there's two different type of views on him. The common people, a certain portion of common people, they still view him positively. Okay, but for the middle class, for the people who he hurt, and they have very, very bad regard about him.
Right.
So there's two different point of view. But down the road, how he will be ended up, where it's ended up, I think that he will ended up not being not well written in the book of history.
So if Xi is gone and there's a replacement, what does this mean for other countries around the world?
Well, it's a big question. It's a very, very big question. Nobody knows. As you know, China is the number 2 economy right now. Okay, wielding a lot of powers, and China actually CCP essentially I think stay behind Russia, Iran, and then North Korea, and in a certain sense Cuba and then Venezuela. And if CCP is no longer CCP or just changes behavior, that's going to have a huge impact on the world. For the better, I would say. But your question is, how do you all change? Nobody knows, because the people who has the power now, they are hesitating. They've been in this state for almost a year and a half. Okay, they still continue that way.
How much longer do you expect it will go on for? Obviously, it's difficult to make predictions.
Right, they cannot go on forever. That's true. At a certain point, I would say in the near future, something will change. I hope they would make the right choice. I think shall be they move out of the system of CCP, of the communist system, because they also, it doesn't work. They also know it doesn't work, but it is the shell that enable them to retain power, political power. Okay, whether they are willing to let go of this shell, this power, and really thinking for the public goods, that's the test that they're facing.
Looking at some wider issues, the re-election of Trump. How do the CCP view that? What impact has it had on the CCP?
Yeah, they wish to have another person. I'm sure they don't like him.
Right.
They probably did not expect him to be so strong, and now they know. Okay, I don't think the Trump is something that CCP prefers if they have a choice, because I don't see Trump as intention. Okay, to change CCP, change China, regime change, or anything like that. No, he does not have that agenda. He just wants a fair trade. But a fair trade is nearly impossible for Chinese Communist Party. It's impossible. Okay, they got here through all kinds of manipulation and cheating and fraud and those things. For them to give up all those things, that's their advantage. That's their strength. They cannot do that. For example, just like at WTO, like if Trump said, "Open up your market," just like how I opened up my market. Okay, you open up the market for the media, and if this show can be broadcast in China, we'll create a havoc to the party. And the banking system, they close it. The telecom industry, they close it. And then the internet platform, they close it. And there's, a lot of, a few of them, they hold very tight on themselves. And Trump, in certain sense, I would say he thought it too simple. We just open it up, and just like how we treat you, you treat us, this is in the same way. But no, CCP cannot bear with that. So Trump, by merely insisting on equal treatment, is fatal for CCP.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think Trump and the government and other governments around the world understand these things about China and say in the same way that you're talking about them?
Yeah, that's. I hope they find out. I think just like what's happening right. There's a doctor in Los Angeles. He spoke on the media saying that first we want to thank you. She was Iranian. She was Iranian. Okay, she came out of Iran and then now become a doctor in Southern California. And she in the media he said first we how to say Iranian American. We want to thank President Trump. The second, he said you have to understand they only value power. They don't value negotiation. And they see that as a weakness, okay, or a tactic of delay. And then the third is that don't think like American, don't think about Iranian regime as you think about an American. We value human lives here. They don't. They value martyrship, and they value death. It's not how we think about it. Same thing here, okay? With China, with the situation in China, how you understand the Chinese regime, Chinese communist regime, Trump administration, as well as other Western government, you have to, just put your feet in the shoes of Chinese people, think in their terms. Then then you can understand what's happening there. Then would guide your policy, China policy better. I think that's the test. Yeah.
So there's often talk about this enormous kind of battle to end all battles, USA versus China. Do you think that's a likely possibility?
Personally, I don't think that would happen. But all kinds of rivalry will happen on the economic side, in the peaceful way, and the competition, and so on and so forth. But the reason why I think that probably won't be a war, I cannot be 100% sure. I think the likelihood is small, is because CCP knows its own weakness.
Right.
Okay, it's not that strong. Actually, to be honest, I think the American United States, okay, perceived the threat of CCP more than it deserved, which happened not to be a bad thing. Okay, because the intention of the CCP is very vicious. That often is underestimated, but the real power of CCP is not that big. But anyway, it's enough to scare Americans into action. And so I think the current China policy of Trump is sound, and is still called peace through strength. Okay, with enough intimidating strength, enough military power, especially manifested by this B-2 bombing of Iran in the last few days, that indeed show CCP that you are dealing with something that you just cannot live up to, and behave yourself. Don't create trouble. And I think, CCP is I would say, government or the regime who was the most scared by the Trump's, 15,000 kilometers long-range attack of Iran in the last few days. And then you just like how they learned the lesson during the 1991, the first Gulf War, if you remember that really scared the heck out of the CCP. They put in a lot of research to understand how we are, generation, lagging behind. So now they're in a similar mode. So I think imminent end of war, I don't see that bad.
One of the big differences between the Chinese regime and other authoritarian regimes and our Western governments is they plan for such a long time ahead. because they don't get replaced by an election. What are the CCP's long-term plans for the world?
Yeah, that's a very small number of Westerners understanding that. Okay, and then they got this. There's a book called 100-Year Marathon, wrote by former military expert Pilbury. Okay, he got it right. Okay, CCP has a long-term view. CCP is the only regime who has a long-term goal of replacing America. They want to put in their own world order. Okay, in Chinese language is called 红旗插遍全球. They want to, put the red flag all over the globe. That's ingrained in their gene. Okay, they're born with that goal. They will never give up. When they don't appear to be so aggressive, it's because they're not powerful enough. If they perceive that they're powerful enough, they're going to show that nature. This is part of what Xi Jinping showed. Unfortunately, prematurely. Okay, he was a few steps ahead of himself, but that exposed the CCP's true nature. But that's his true nature. That's not something that they stumble upon. That's their true nature, and then they will retain that nature. They will keep building themselves quietly until someday they think they can threaten America again. And when they can threaten America, then they can threaten the world.
A lot of China commentators are worried about Taiwan. And do you think the Taiwan situation is dangerous?
I think Taiwan situation is always dangerous, and because just over 90 kilometers away, we got this. You got the big Chinese government sitting there, and then threatening Taiwan anytime. So I think it's always dangerous. But the good part is you have the back of America. I do think so. Okay, even Taiwanese, they doubt it. I don't doubt it. They have the back. They have the back of the President Trump and his administration and the U.S. military. But Taiwan has to be vigilant enough, has to be diligent enough to protect itself, and at least for the initial phase of the war, in order to survive. And they cannot rely upon just I got America to protect us. Let's just lay low and just relax. No, it's they always live in danger. That's how I see it.
As a China expert, you must come across a lot of issues that you think should be in the Western mainstream, but they're not. And what would you say is the biggest one that people in the West should be talking about, but they're not talking about?
A lot of things, actually. I think reading the fact of China is very limited for Western media and Western governments, because they cannot send their reporters there and read everything. There's a lot of limitation there. And then I think the reporting or understanding of China and the regime is very shallow. Okay, they just pretty much pick what the regime said and then try to decipher it, reading between the line. You don't got people who freely go into the cities and the countryside and the military interview people, so on and so forth. Okay, and then so indeed they got only a very partial picture of what China truly is. If they truly understand China, they go into or at least they talk to people like me, who study China enough, who came out of there, who's still reporting them and talking to people. They would understand that the situation is quite different from what they thought. For example, the economic situation there is way worse than they thought.
Right.
Yeah. So out of just one example, okay, out of this generation, this year, class 2025, okay, people who come out of college and the job market, there are 12 million of them. 80 to 85% of them. We're talking about college graduates. 80 or 85% of them cannot find a job.
Really?
Yeah. If I say this, you will say, "Really? Are you sure?"
Yeah.
That's the fact. That's how bad the situation is. But the Western world, they don't understand it. They even say, "Oh, China, okay, they reached 5%, GDP growth last year." The growth might be actually it's not might be. In my view, the growth was a negative. But they were just arguing it's 4.5% or 5%, so on and so forth. And then those numbers came from the CCP's the mouthpiece. It's not trustable. So the West has a lot of things to do, a lot of research to do to understand China well, to read China well. Another thing is I think the one key thing that the Western people needs to do is to separate China and the CCP,
Right.
separate them, and separate the Chinese people from the CCP. They don't equal. Okay, so think about it, Li. Communism is a Western ideology, right? Came from Russia,
Yep.
which then came from Germany. Germany doesn't keep it. Russia now doesn't keep it, and then now it's stay and stick in China. It's not a China's native grown thing. And then actually, in my view, China fell into the hands of the communists. It's like almost like a foreign invader, and then taking the territory and taking its culture and just hold on to this piece of land, this territory and its people. They are separable. They can be separated. Now I think Secretary of State Rubio, and also the previous Secretary Pompeo, the previous Secretary of State of the United States, they are very careful to separate them apart. If you notice the speech, they never say Chinese government, they say CCP.
Right.
They don't call President Xi Jinping, they said General Secretary Xi Jinping. But still, only a small number of them, okay? They are the elite who understand China better than other people. Most public, most people, they don't understand the difference. China's CCP was a difference. There is big difference. Separate them out, then you see the solution of China. For the better China in the future.
So the situation with the media you talked about is this ongoing thing where Western media find it really difficult to report on China. They get told if you criticize certain things, you'll lose your status to be a reporter in Beijing or whatever. What can we do about that?
Yeah, this is, I think, one word, right? It's called reciprocity, right? The word of that. However you want me to treat you, you need to treat my people in the same way.
Yeah.
Just be very strong over there. Then you either have your reporter coming in, which I still think is not very possible, but at least you can remove their reporters and have them feel the pain, okay? Feel the unequalness. But indeed, with the CCP being there, it's hard to get into a situation where you can fairly assess everything, because the nature of the regime just does not allow you to do that. You still have to rely upon the Chinese people, maybe with the overseas Chinese people, start with that. When the Soviet Union, just collapsed, before that, a lot of dissidents and intellectuals came out of the Soviet Union. They go to the media, they talk, they go to Congress. American people listen to them and then watch them talk. Then they understand, they understand the concept of Gulag, or what is that? They understand the communism. Otherwise, they don't understand it because, for example, Americans like you, British, you don't live in communism. What is communism like? How do you know, right? Somebody who know it have to tell you. And then I think the same thing needs to be happening for China. People like me needs to be more outspoken, given more opportunity. Okay, go to the front line, go to the front, go to the stage, tell people that, what do we learn? Because indeed, we came from that country. And we stay in this country too, in the Western world. We understand both sides. We compare. We are the messengers. I think that's the why you interview me. I hope that I can play some role there.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked there about Western media in China. Do we see much in the reverse? Does the CCP try and impact or affect the Western media?
Yeah, they've been always trying to do that. That's true. It's called infiltration. This is a very big topic. Okay, we can spend a half hour on that. There have several strategies. Okay, starting with just buying you out, or just buying a certain share of that, or just send some people, the professional, infiltrate your media, or even just the simplest way, just buy a certain page out of you, and pretend it's not just posing this not as a advertisement, rather as native content. They have all kinds of ways. They have all kinds of ways to do that. And the West needs to be aware of that. And the Western media needs to be, alert enough not to fall into their trap. Usually coming with, as a form of a good deal. I'll give you a lot of money. Okay, you need money to survive. Every media need that, right? So they can fall into the trap there.
So how do you see things going for China? Do you think we'll see another 70 years of the Chinese Communist Party?
No, I don't see it that way. And the regime can, they can only, cover their crime or their lie or the fact for so long. And time is not on their side. Okay, even though, many people still see they're very powerful, they are not. Okay, only they themselves know how weak they are. But outside people, they don't know. And from, my understanding or my research, they're not that strong. They definitely don't have another 7 decades. They probably don't have another 7 years, possibly shorter than that. But indeed, I think the best way to help China is through information, still information, not bombers or weapons and things like that. And just, in the modern age, people read, they watch, just get the free information to China and let them know what's the fact, in the world and what's the fact around them. They will change. So I think that's where we should spend our main, resource upon.
When the Soviet Union fell, it was a kind of world-shaking event, really. We still talk about it now. But what changes would the world see if the Chinese Communist Party fell?
Well, that's going to be something very good, apparently. As I said, CCP is behind a lot of bad regimes in the world. Almost everyone, almost. Okay, I would say 90%. Iran and even Hamas. Okay, the West may not understand that. I think in the tunnels of the Hamas, there's a lot of the technology, probably the technology of digging those tunnels. Those are the classic signature maneuver or action of the CCP in the 1940s. They're very good at digging tunnels all over the place. Even today in China, the underground tunnels, is estimated to be 100,000 miles long. Yeah, they got the big underground world. That's their signature, okay? If the CCP goes away, then the world will be much safer. A lot of bad regime, they lose the support. Okay, they need to come back to the senses because they no longer have all those resources to do the bad things. So, yeah, I think the world cannot wait for that to happen.
Allen Zeng, thanks for joining us.
Sure. You're welcome.